Okay, I am so excited today, guys. I have a very, very special guest with me. I have Sara Langley. She is an integrative psychiatric nurse practitioner. She treats children and adolescents with ADHD, autism, depression, and anxiety. Sara specializes in nutritional psychiatry and she blends with traditional medication management. Sarah's from Beverly Hills, California, and she's the creator of Mommies in Mind, a blog site providing advice and education to parents regarding childhood mental health conditions. So I am so pumped to have Sara here today. So without further ado, welcome, Sara. Tell us a little bit about how you got started as a nurse practitioner.
Thank you, Christina Marie. That was a beautiful introduction, and thank you.
Yes.
So, in terms of getting started as a nurse practitioner, originally I'm from England. So, during the time that I was living in London, I was volunteering at a local hospital and just really enjoyed the patient interaction. I enjoyed being with them and advocating for them to staff. So, I knew that was kind of where I wanted to be headed. I
Yes.
applied to medical school in England, secured a place there, but at the same time had applied to pre-med in Columbia, New York, and also got that. So it was very much reaching a fork in the road in terms of, do I stay home in England and become a doctor, or do I go to America and try my luck? So I made
Yes.
jump and went to New York City, and then soon realized that because the system is quite different, medical school here is a graduate degree, and I was like, oh, so I have to do pre-med and then apply and then maybe or maybe not get in. And by the time I came to the States, I was slightly older. I was pushing 30 years old, so it didn't seem like that was something that a route that I necessarily wanted to pursue. And then my advisor informed me about the nurse practitioner degree, and I was like, what is that? I've never heard of
Yeah.
it because we don't have that in England. And
Okay.
she was like, okay, you can do the same sort of thing as an MD. You can prescribe, you can treat patients. And I was like, perfect, done. And I still get
Yes.
to focus on patient care. I still get to form that, lovely connection with patients and, provide
Yes.
care that is comprehensive and holistic. So that's how I ended up doing that. And I specialized primarily in primary care, and then I tagged on psychiatry during the pandemic. So I'm now dual board certified for both.
Wow, what a journey, Sara. That's amazing. We're so
Yeah.
lucky to have you here in the States. I'm
Thank
glad you chose to come here. So I know that you work with kids with many different types of conditions. For the purpose of today, we'll just be focusing on ADHD. A lot of parents in my world have kids with ADHD. So could you tell us, Sarah, when a child comes in, a parent is maybe on the fence, they don't know if their child has ADHD, and they just want you to try to take a look and evaluate them. What are the key signs you look for diagnosing ADHD?
Sure. So
Mhm.
a lot of it's going to be collateral information. So to make the diagnosis, we need collateral from at least two different sources. So here it's going to be from the parents, what the parents are noticing at home, what the parents are noticing, during extracurricular activities, the grades and what teachers have told them. And then obviously from the teachers themselves in terms of how is the child behaving in the class in comparison to other kids. So that's important. So is the way that they're behaving developmentally appropriate in terms of, they're all age 4 and everybody's running around like the Duracell bunny, like that's okay, like that's probably,
Right.
developmentally appropriate. But then is a particular child being disruptive during class? Are they bothering their neighbor during class? Are they up and out of their seat? Are they fidgeting? Do they have difficulty following along? Are there,
Mhm.
lots of doodles on the schoolwork? Do they have difficulty starting projects, completing assignments? So typically for my purposes, I'm seeing children around 9, 10 who are coming in predominantly, who are getting a brand new diagnosis of ADHD, because I feel like the parents have been putting it off for so long in terms of getting them diagnosed and getting them assessed because of the concern,
Yes.
potentially starting medication management. And
Mhm.
also at that age, by about, late elementary, middle school is when the work really starts becoming challenging. And that's when the child
Yes.
really begins to struggle. And that's typically when self-esteem starts to plummet. Anxiety and depression might creep in because the child is starting to feel self-conscientious and they feel like they're not good enough, not keeping up. So
Right.
typically at that point is when I'm seeing kids in the clinic when the symptoms are kind of really in full force. And then we have
Yes.
other co-occurring issues happening at the same time.
Yes, I love that whole holistic model. Like you're looking at different sources and how the child is at home and how the child is at school. Is there a certain type of rating scale or assessment that you usually use for
Absolutely.
diagnosing ADHD?
Yes, so there are a few scales available. The two most common are the Connors and the
Connor.
Vanderbilt. For,
Yes.
for my for my purposes, I use the Vanderbilt rating scale. That's what I was trained in, so that's what I'm most comfortable with. And so
Hmm.
one form is sent to the teacher, one form is sent to the parents. Both of them fill them out. I mean, the
Yes.
forms in of themselves are not diagnostic, right? Even if it's
Okay.
positive, it's not enough
Yeah.
information just to have a positive score on the Vanderbilt to give the diagnosis of an ADHD. You are looking for that collateral. You are looking for, other sources, whether that's caregivers, whether that's a therapist who might be involved in the child's care. And then I also like
Right.
to get on the phone with the teachers and say, like, how are they in class? Like, you scored this on the Vanderbilt. Tell me more about what you're seeing. The nice
Right.
thing about Vanderbilt is it also assesses for oppositional defiant disorder, because sometimes
Oh,
that
yes.
can coexist with the ADHD. So that screens
Yes.
for that, which is really helpful for me. And also
Mhm.
for anxiety, it screens for anxiety as well. There are a couple of questions at the bottom. So it's quite comprehensive, and it does look for the most commonly occurring comorbid psychiatric conditions of ODD and anxiety. So I like it personally.
Awesome, awesome. And then, Sarah, just to piggyback, if you don't mind, off of um, how you diagnose. So let's say that a child is, completely fine in school.
Mhm.
Performance is high, teachers don't see it, but at home they are really showing signs. How do you handle a situation like that? Would a child still be able to be diagnosed with ADHD if they're like textbook ADHD symptoms at home, but at school they're like a perfect angel? Have you ever had a case like that?
So I've had cases the other way around where the child is
Oh,
struggling at school, but then at home they're fine. And in that instance, it's likely a specific learning disability, like a dyslexia, like a dyscalculia, which is why they're struggling and acting out at school. But then on the weekends, they're fine and dandy, and there's no problem there. To make the diagnosis, we do need at least two locations. The symptoms need to be present in at least two locations. Just one, that doesn't meet
yes.
the diagnostic criteria. So if a child is okay in school, but at home they're acting out, that might be an indication of something happening within the family structure itself, whether there's like a family dynamic there that needs to be addressed, through family
Yes.
therapy or some other intervention to kind of help with the relational issues there.
Hmm.
That isn't enough for me to diagnose an ADHD.
Okay, that's an excellent explanation. Thank you. I just asked because I have a lot of parents that I work with and they have that situation, but it's usually like I've had a few parents recently who the child is completely falls apart at home, but then at school they're fine. And so, and in the school system, because I used to be a teacher and a school counselor, kids, we can't diagnose them. Not that I diagnose, but they cannot be diagnosed, unless like there's, a problem that they
Right.
can see in school that impacts academics. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that explanation. That was beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. So let's talk about, if you don't mind, what would a typical treatment plan look like? I know that it's not going to be a one size fits all because all children are different, but what are some types of things that you might put into a treatment plan for a child with ADHD?
Sure. So the initial goal is to always meet parents where they're at. So if a
Yes.
parent comes to me, they have, they have their own personal experience of being on a stimulant medication because they themselves have ADHD. They responded well. They want the same thing for their child. We can absolutely start there. We can be more aggressive. We can start with something prescription first. I do always like to sprinkle in a little bit of supplementation just to help the brain and body make all the
Yes.
chemicals that it needs to make the dopamine and norepinephrine that are running low. So I always try to encourage some supplementation, even if parents are fully on board with the prescription medication. I try to
Hmm.
edge that in. But for the most part, parents seek me out because I am conservative in that I do take a nutritional psychiatry approach,
Yes.
addressing diet at home, for example, and then adding supplementation that is, specific for ADHD. So that's going to look like, omegas, B vitamins,
Yes.
folate, for example. We do a lot of magnesium is very popular, and then you can
Mhm.
look at other, botanicals like saffron. You can add things like that in.
Yes.
So,
Hmm.
so a typical, so for the most part, the most typical treatment plan, parents are coming in, we do the assessment, we sit down, we talk about food sources for these specific micronutrients that they can try to introduce into the child's diet, which may or may not work because for the most
Mm-hmm.
part for ADHD, they're impulsive. They are probably picky eaters in that respect, and they're not making healthy
Right.
choices all the time. And if they're at school and it's cafeteria food, it's very carby, very, very kind of
Yes.
as nutritionally dense as we would like it to be. So sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, depending on how involved the child is willing to be with at-home dietary changes.
Yes.
Otherwise, I always my standard is omega. So we start with a very with a good amount of omega, high dose. We start with magnesium. We start with a probiotic. I always introduce probiotics.
Yes.
The gut helps us break down those insoluble fibers that we wouldn't be able to break down on our own, and then
Mm-hmm.
those insoluble fibers, the building blocks are sent to the brain like little Lego pieces, and the
Mm-hmm.
brain pieces everything together to make the
Yes.
dopamine, to make the norepinephrine, to make the serotonin. So I do try to
Mm-hmm.
encourage the body's own natural production of brain chemicals that are otherwise running low in ADHD. The issue here is that anecdotally, the improvement is going to be about 20%, which isn't zero. It's
Mm-hmm.
something, but
Yeah.
maybe for like a mild, if there's such a thing, ADHD, and if the child has other supports in place, like ed therapy, as well as any other educational interventions, executive functioning coaching, it
Yes.
might be enough to help
Mm-hmm.
them, to do well in school and
Mm-hmm.
to help control symptoms, especially if they're in a school setting that is specific to specific learning disabilities and ADHD, for example. Like there are some schools in Los Angeles where this is all this is the student population. This is all they have. So those kids do
Right.
really well there because all the
Mm-hmm.
structures are in place for their specific learning style. So for those
Yes.
kids, supplementation diet, it might be enough. Um,
Yes.
Typically, if a child is in the public school system, for example, or more elite private schools, then we typically do need to add either a non-stimulant or a stimulant medication to provide full symptom coverage and to really help them excel.
Wow, wow. Thank you so, so much. So we kind of talked about this already. I was going to ask you how important nutrition is, and you kind of did touch on that. And I love how you talked about how you really have to take it by case basis based on like what are their other supports, what type of school they're going to, what they have for lunch. Just
Yes.
real quick, I wanted to ask you about protein. Is protein, I've heard, is pretty important for a child and with ADHD. I think it's important for every child, but I've heard particularly for ADHD. Can you speak to protein at all? Is that something that you recommend, in the daily diet for breakfast before they go to school?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
So there are multiple reasons that protein is important for ADHD. So we'll start with just biochemically. The protein is broken down into amino acids. And again, those
Mm-hmm.
amino acids form those building blocks that we need to
Mm-hmm.
travel up to the brain. The brain pieces them together, makes our brain chemicals, our neurotransmitters. So we need it for supply there. It's
Right.
also helpful for children who have appetite suppression on a stimulant, for example. They're taking a stimulant, they're skipping
Mm-hmm.
lunch, there's just no drive to eat on a stimulant medication. So for those
Right.
kids, really front loading protein, in the mornings, so, breakfast sausages, omelets, whatever it happens to be,
Yes.
pancakes made with, some sort of, almond flour for additional protein, snacking on high protein snacks. That's
Yes.
to keep them functioning and full throughout the day whilst the stimulant kind of, goes up in their system, comes back down, and then hopefully by
Right.
the time they get home, they can have a full dinner as well, like protein heavy dinner, obviously with vegetables as well, to kind of just keep them full and keep them feeling content
Yes.
for the rest of the day. And just a baseline, like protein keeps us, like we all know this, protein keeps us full. You
Right.
know,
Right.
sugar, carbs are in and out of our systems pretty quickly, and then we spike and we crash, and then we're miserable and irritable. And especially with ADHD, where there is that kind of baseline, mood component for some kids who have just irritability and they're just annoyed constantly, that's going to help kind of even out the blood sugar levels and just keep them
Yes.
content and keep them, keep parents happy as well. So,
Yes, which is important, right? We all have to be happy.
right.
Love that. Love that. Awesome. This has been amazing, Sarah. So, if you were to give your number one tip
Mhm.
to parents of kids with either ADHD tendencies, or maybe they're just on the fence, they don't know if their child has ADHD, what would that tip be from you to
Sure.
parents?
So I would say, I mean, if you're curious and want to just even have a conversation with a healthcare provider about
Hmm.
options, it's not a commitment, just a conversation. I would
Mhm.
advise looking out for specifically an integrative psychiatrist or an integrative psychiatric
Yes.
practitioner, because the care that they provide is going to be 360, holistic, comprehensive, very balanced. They're not going to
Hmm.
push medications one way or another. They are going to, again, meet you where you're at and provide support in the domains of therapy, support in the domains of nutrition, supplementation, giving you advice about exercise and sleep and all these other facets that we seem to have forgotten because we're so used to just throwing prescription pills at our problems and not really addressing the underlying
Right.
issues that could be contributing to a worsening symptoms. And also just to let parents with children with ADHD know that your kid can't control their behaviors. They don't mean to be, naughty kids. They don't mean to
Yes.
behave. They want to make you proud. They want to make you
Hmm.
love them. So for parents just to kind of be patient, be kind to be kind to yourself, because as a parent, it's difficult to manage children with those types of symptoms, and also to
Right.
obviously show kindness to your child and understanding that they want to do they want to do better. They are trying, but just
Right.
chemically, biologically, they struggle. They
They
struggle
str
with impulse behaviors and things like that. They have no control over it. They're not trying to
right.
annoy you actively. They are trying to keep it together and be the best version of themselves, but it's
Yeah,
challenging.
it is. I love that. I love that, Sarah. I'm on a mission to end the stigma around ADHD because, so many parents and even colleagues that I worked with in the past, like teachers are just like, "Oh, that kid's naughty. He needs more consequences." And I'm like,
Right.
no, 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 no. We really need to educate ourselves of what an ADHD brain looks like. And I always tell my clients, I'm sure that you've heard of this in your line of work, Sarah, that an ADHD brain is like a Ferrari engine with bicycle brakes, right? And it's just really, really hard for them to slow the swirl in their brain. So, like you had mentioned, they're not being bad. They don't want to be bad. They're not, this isn't purposeful. It really is a neurological condition.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
absolutely.
I thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
Thanks.
I have absolutely loved this interview. Now, if someone wants to reach out to you, Sarah, can you tell us where can they find you and what does it look like to work with you?
Of course. So
Hmm.
as you mentioned, my practice is based in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
So I do have a website they can go to, which is www.childskindpsychiatry, all one word.com. There's a comment box they can fill in to make contact with me. Otherwise, my email is Sara, Sara, at childkindpsychiatry.com if you want to reach me there. And yes, in terms of working with me, it would start with an initial discovery call, as it were, for 30 minutes, just to see kind of what the goals are, what the concerns are, and for them for me to answer any questions or concerns about my practice approach, because it's not always going to be the right fit. So before people
Yes.
book, I want to make sure it's the right fit because I want to work with families who want to work with me effectively.
Yes.
Yes, but
Yeah.
otherwise, I do have, as you mentioned, the Mummies in Mind blog site where I release articles maybe twice a month or so about specific childhood and mental health conditions, predominantly ADHD, just because that's what I'm seeing the most in the clinic. And
Yes.
yes, and I do
Hmm.
have pre-recorded presentation on ADHD that I give that I'm currently giving to local schools as well as to new families in my clinic. And I can give you the link for your members if they'd like to just log on and watch that. It's on YouTube. Um,
Yes.
yes, but otherwise, the blog site is www.mommiesinmind.com.
Perfect. And I will drop all these links for
Thank
our
you.
viewers.
Thank
Yes. So
you.
yes, in terms of the gift you wanted to give to
Mhm.
people that are listening today, would it be that recording that you were just mentioning?
Of course, there's a recording. I also have
Yes.
a magnesium cheat sheet.
Oh,
So it
love it.
give magnesium dosing, the type of magnesium that you need, because not all magnesium is created equally. So some
Mm-hmm.
forms get into the brain, some forms don't. And then dosing based on age, because I know parents struggle there in terms of how do we dose it to, a 7-year-old versus a 14-year-old. So I give
Right.
dosing instructions there in terms of how to adjust that based on age.
That's awesome. Wow.
Thank you.
Audience, you are so lucky. You are getting all kinds of goodies from Sarah today. Recording about ADHD, a cheat sheet. Oh my gosh, couldn't ask for more. This has
Thank you.
been so amazing, Sarah. I cannot thank you enough for your time. I have learned so much from you, and I hope to continue learning from you. You are such an asset to everyone, especially parents who, are struggling and they don't know how to help their kids with ADHD. So I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here today and for your time. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you so much, Christina Maria. This was lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. You are amazing. Okay.